everybody. Welcome to the Good Witch podcast. This is a show where we recap the exciting events of the Good Witch, and we have the series finale. We're talking about episode 9 and 10 of season 7 today, and it's kind of crazy that it's done. Can you believe it, Randy?
I can't believe it. It seemed like it was going to go on forever, but I guess all good things.
Yep. All things was said. So yeah, how do you feel overall of how they kind of wrapped up the season slash series?
I mean, I have to say, overall, I thought that it was okay. I feel like they did wrap up all the storylines. I don't think they left anything hanging, but it was all a bit rushed. I felt it was obvious to me that they didn't know until maybe halfway through the season that this was going to be the last season. And I think they didn't really know 100% for sure until after they finished shooting, because I've heard that they shot two endings, one that was more open-ended and one that wrapped everything up, but it just felt a bit rushed to me. But otherwise, if it has to end, I didn't mind. And I like that they kind of left things open. Maybe we'll get a movie down the road. We'll talk about that a bit, because I think that might be in our future, fingers crossed.
Yeah, they did a little goodbye to the fans thing on Facebook. I don't know if you saw that, but it was really sweet and I enjoyed it. But it was a little strange because Kylie Evans said, "This is not goodbye. It's just it's not goodbye forever. We'll be back," or something like that. And I was just kind of confused by that because I think it is goodbye forever. So maybe I don't know what she was talking about there, but maybe there will be, maybe she just meant in working for Hallmark, or if she meant there would be a movie or something like that.
I
I don't know.
I don't think there's anything planned. I would say
Yeah.
this is just my gut feeling, is that they'll wrap up the show, they'll see how it goes, and maybe there'll be a movie in the future. It's not, I don't think they have anything planned. I think it means things like all these sets are going to be taken down. So if we do get a movie down the road, like, it's very expensive to put these sets back up. So it'll be, in other locations somewhere or something like that, I suspect.
Mhm.
So I think everybody sort of like thinks, it's never over until it's over. But for now, it certainly seems like it's over.
Mhm. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about any shoots or anything like that going on. But I don't know. That was strange. I thought that she said that, but yeah, I overall thought it was fine. It was kind of goofy. I How do you feel about how they've just like leaned into the whole magic thing this season in a different way than it's ever really been on the show?
Well, certainly in these last couple of episodes, they really leaned into it. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the first time that I can remember where they're openly admitted, "Oh, we're witches." They've never said that before. It's
Yeah.
always been like, "Oh, the Merowicks, they have this sort of special kind of intuition and things like that." But they're really leaning into it, and I think because in social media, tons of people have always said that they wanted more magic on the show. They want more sort of actual magic happening. And I think this is you know, this shows you that you shouldn't always give people what they want, because I don't think it works as well as it sort of ended up being like Charmed or something like that, which this show
Yeah.
is not really that show. The whole thing with the amulet, I mean, we'll get to it, I guess, but the whole thing with the amulet and the ray and the moon and everything, that does not feel like this show
Yeah.
at
Yeah, I feel
all.
like it's just a little bit weird to all of a sudden like completely change kind of what the show is about. And I mean the idea that the Joy has been riding around on brooms and crashed into a tree. I mean, that is just so not what the show is. Like, there's never been anything close to that. I mean, the
Yeah,
closest that we ever got was, I think it was in one of the movies where she puts a spell on the dog. Uh, that's the closest that we'd ever gotten until this season.
Yeah, I think the broom thing was more of a joke than anything else. But you're right that all this, like actually saying that you're a witch and actually having sort of all these like real physical powers, as opposed to more of this the intuition and sort of and that sort of thing. They always used to ride the line. The whole idea is, is she or isn't she a witch? That's the idea, right? It's like,
Yeah.
is she a witch? She could be, but maybe she's just, really intuitive and knows what people want. And they just like, they dove deep into the deep end real fast
Yeah.
on this magic stuff.
I also thought the whole idea of witches being this like persecuted minority was a little groan worthy. We'll talk about that more in the finale episode, but it's I don't know. It's not the same as like they're trying to make it seem like it's the same uh as people being like racist or people being like not accepting witches. I don't know. That was a little much, I thought.
Yeah. I don't know that I really caught on to that. There was that last episode was so, we'll talk about it, was so disjointed
Mhm.
because they were trying to, not only were they trying to pack a lot into a short amount of time, because they've done that before, but like just for example, Joy was part of the storyline of, rebuilding the amulet and everything. And then
Mhm.
she was also having her storyline with Zoe and meeting her father, and then her
Yeah.
ex comes into town and all that. They kept cutting back and forth, and I'm literally like, so Joy is like they're doing the amulet, then she goes out for a date with her girlfriend, then she comes back and they're doing more of the amulet. I mean, they just kept cutting back and forth, and Joy was in both storylines, and I just like my brain was doing flip-flops.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like the whole thing of like you have to love her for who she is and she the instead of I don't know, that
Yeah, no, I got that. I got that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
it
just
was a
a
bit heavy.
little
It's a little
yeah.
heavy-handed for sure.
Right. Anyway, well, let's talk about it wasn't all lost. We don't want to sound too
No,
negative. And so there's episode 9, The Search. And this starts with flashback to the Merrywicks. And they say, respect the privilege that's been bestowed on this family. The amulet will protect the gift from the red haloed moon. So that Joy is having these dreams, and the Merrywicks are telling her how to fight off the moon that was gonna take away their powers. Did you like that as sort of a way
I
to
do.
frame the show?
Yeah, I do enjoy the flashbacks. They've done them a few times in the past where they flash back to
Mhm.
olden times with their ancestors or everything. And this played as one of Joy's dream. I don't mind that. It was a little much to find yet another hidden room
I
in
know.
Gray House. I was like, good Lord, there are so many hidden rooms in this house. It's insane. But there it
Yes,
was,
there
yet
it
another
was.
hidden room.
Yeah, yeah, and the way she just like it was just like in The Shining, like here's
Yeah.
she's like she's wheeling her axe into the wall it was pretty dramatic. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was great. Well, and then it led to what has to be my favorite line spoken in all of Good Witch, and that's saying something. Is I can't even remember what the lead up to it was, but they were like, "Oh, this happened and this happened and this happened," and somebody said, "Oh, so you mean just another Tuesday at Grey House?"
Right.
Which I absolutely love that line.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a good one. I think that was Abigail, maybe. I can't remember, but that
might have
was
been.
funny. That was funny. So Joy is all of a sudden be able to predict what people are feeling, and she gets these intuitions, and she tells Martha that Tom has a secret, and so then Martha's upset about it, and we find out that Tom is getting a going in for heart surgery, and this is what he's been keeping from
Yeah,
Martha.
I mean, I love Tom and Martha, but it just felt odd to me that Tom would keep something like this from her.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if he's having heart problems and he goes in to get it looked at and doesn't want to tell her because maybe the doctor tells him, oh, it's no big deal, so he doesn't want to concern her. But once the doctor is like, oh, you're going to have surgery, like that, Tom would not tell Martha that right away. Just doesn't seem
Yeah.
in character for them.
Well, and it's an incredibly safe surgery. It's not like it's some high risk kind of thing. So it's a little bit weird,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah. It just felt a little, forced.
Yeah, I think it might have been nice for Martha to have been her final sort of story arc to be something about being mayor as opposed to just being sort of worried
she
about.
was she was virtually not. I mean, no, we're talking about episode 9, right? But when we get to episode 10, the finale of the entire series, and she's virtually not in the show. I
Yeah.
mean, she's in a couple of episodes and only in relationship to Tom having his surgery,
Yeah.
and which is fine. But that's, you're wrapping up the entire show. She's such a huge part of it, and then she's barely in it. She barely has a storyline.
Agreed. Yeah, that was weird. And so then we have Stephanie talking to George about the almost kiss that they had with Adam and her had. And she's going off to Paris and she doesn't know kind of what to do. And yeah, I don't know. It's, I'm not the biggest fan of Stephanie and Adam, their relationship. So this was kind of probably
Well,
my least
a
favorite
couple
part of the finale.
Yeah, same. A couple of things bothered me here. I like Adam a little bit more than you do, but there were a couple of things that really bugged me here. As I said last week, her whole thing about, oh, I almost kissed Adam. I was like, what are you, 13? I
Yeah,
mean, like, you're an adult woman. You almost kissed your ex-boyfriend. Like, so what? It's
right.
not that big of a deal. But more importantly, she's considering, like, oh, if I go away to the baking school in Paris for 6 months, like, can we still be a couple? And I was like, that's exactly the situation that happened before, except it was only 2 months that Adam went away, and in those
Yeah.
2 months he found somebody else. You think you can go away to Paris for 6 months and Adam's going to be sitting waiting for you when you get back? I mean,
And
that's the exact same thing.
he's never apologized for,
Never.
at least on the show that we've seen. He never apologized for doing that, which is very frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. She's just forgiven him. I mean, he's making amends in the actions that he's doing, but the words are important, and he's not giving them, or we haven't seen them.
Yeah, and they think we're like swooning over Stephanie and Adam? Like I don't know anybody, even if you don't mind the couple. I don't know anybody that like is outright like
The fact
one of
that
their favorites.
the big final wedding was Adam and Stephanie
Ugh,
instead of Abigail and Donovan
I
is is
it's so bizarre.
really bizarre. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. That's a perfect word for it. It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
um do a double wedding if you want or whatever, but
Yeah.
waiting for Stephanie and Adam to get married was not something. I mean, it's fine. I think it's fine if they got married. If this was not the series finale, I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay. But like, to have that be the big finale thing, it's like, come on.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I like I said, it was very strange. But they all show up at Gray House to look for the amulet. And I mean, it is so funny how there's now all of a sudden a cupboard underneath stairs. There's a new cupboard in the mantle. There's there's a hidden room that we didn't know. I mean, Gray House
Oh,
really showed up.
and in the next episode, we see this cabinet in the kitchen that we've seen a million times probably, but it never opened it. She has a key hidden. She
You're
opens
right.
it up, and all her potions and stuff are in there.
Yeah, that was
There,
weird too.
there's lots of nooks and crannies at Gray House, evidently. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, they said, and I don't know if they ever said why. Maybe we're supposed to assume they were like, oh, we have 24 hours to find the amulet. And I'm like, why 24 hours? But I guess that's when the red haloed moon is going to be finished. Like, if they have to get rid of the red haloed moon before it naturally comes to its conclusion, I guess. Otherwise, they'll lose their powers. I guess that's
Yeah.
what that's all about. But I did like that everybody was over there. But again, as we mentioned earlier, so everybody comes over, and it just seems like Sam and George and Martha and everybody sort of knows they're witches now. Like no big deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's Grey House is full of all these witches. I mean, they always knew the Merowicks were kind of, wink wink, a little special. But like to just come out and say, oh yeah, they're witches and they've got a cauldron in their
Yeah.
living room, like no big deal. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, that
Sam,
came out of nowhere.
Sam saying she told you sooner than she told me. I'm like, that would have been nice to have seen that conversation. We never did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It would have been. Now we've seen Sam get used to the idea that whenever he walks in a room, she like knows he's coming before he even enters the room,
Yeah.
which is cute. But that, I mean, there's a long distance between that and
Agree.
you're a witch,
Yeah.
you know.
I agree. So Sam does say he's sorry, and they says we are better, and she says we'll work on good. So that was a strange choice too, as well, for them to end this season with them. I mean, we see a little bit more of a makeup in the finale, but I don't know. I just thought that whole decision was very strange,
Well,
to have them have this fight and to not be
yeah,
getting along.
the fight was weird to begin with, but if you're gonna have it, because you could sort of go along with the idea that Cassie was upset, not as I said last time, not that he's a workaholic, but that he's going back to work too soon after his injury. Okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
But then, like they seem to have solved their problem without solving anything. I mean, they're just like, okay, well, Sam's like, okay, I won't do that anymore, essentially, and she's like, okay, great. I mean, it's like, I don't.
Yeah.
It
I
just
mean,
didn't.
they're both empty nesters at this point, so why not work a lot? Like, what? I don't really understand. Like, what are the other things? Like, what is he missing
I
out on?
think
I
it,
guess doing the hunt thing that they did the last couple
Sweetheart Sprint.
Sweetheart Sprint. Yeah. There's some things, but I don't know. I mean, why not? You're helping a lot of people,
I mean, she
like,
married a doctor. She doesn't think there's going to be missed dinners and missed,
yeah,
things that's like the doctor's life, especially
right.
somebody like him who's on call and is like the greatest surgeon in the world and all that.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
he's
and she's been in a relationship for a long time. So it's not like this is a
yeah. It
new
just
part of his
felt,
life.
again, a lot of these things, especially in the last few episodes, and maybe most of this season, but it really comes into focus in the last couple of episodes, really feels forced. It's like they're forcing these characters to do things because they're sort of running out of ideas, I think.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's one of the reasons they just decided to end it, is like, what ideas do we have anymore with these characters?
Hmm.
Although I have an idea for what I'd like to see next, and I'll tell
Ooh,
you at the end.
yeah. Yeah, so they also find the recipe for the love licorice the in the book, and evidently this is what Elizabeth Merriwick used to. Uh,
Right, to get her I can't remember his name now, but it was the same guy that mentioned him before, that they
mhm,
ran off to Texas together.
right, and I don't mind red licorice, like red vines. I do not like black licorice, so
Oh,
that would not work for me.
I agree, I am with you 100%. I hate black licorice. It just tastes nasty.
So, yeah, so then Joy tells Zoe she's a witch, and she's kind of shocked by that, as you would be, of course, if you were in a relationship with somebody, because this is not like a fantasy show in the sense of like fantasy creatures all around or whatever. Like, of course, if someone told you they were a witch, you would be like, what? And
I
and
mean, yeah,
but
for Joy and Zoe, who are fairly new in their relationship, I mean, there's a lot going on. You're asking a lot from Zoe, uh, to be in this relationship with Joy, and then next week, her ex comes back into town, and there's
yeah,
all kinds of issues going on here. And I get that they're supposed to be falling in love, and that's all great, and that is all great. I love them as a character, but telling her that she's a witch thing, I don't know, just putting that right on the front burner, as it were. was a mistake, I think, because
Yeah.
especially if there had been another season, if this wasn't the end, there was another season. Now it's all out there. Like all of our main characters are like well aware that they're witches. So where do you go with that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then Sam's like, "Well, if she can't accept you for who you are, then you're better off without her." And I was just like, "Come on."
Yeah.
It's like finding out that your girlfriend is a witch is is something that it's not the same as like being kind of confused by that. It's not the same as being like racist.
No,
It's
not
not.
even a little bit. It's not the same thing.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they were going for, that sort of metaphor. But again, like a lot of things, it feels very forced and sort of heavy-handed.
Yeah. So then you have Donovan who is playing the violin and playing the music that was in the secret room or they have six bad notes and they he can't figure out why they wrote it that way, and it turns out that it's the key to opening there's a what do you call those things, little
I don't know, like a little.
puzzle box
Oh, right,
thing.
right. The little puzzle box, which has the correct notes in
Mhm.
them. It was very confusing, actually. Although I watched it a second time and it made more sense. The idea was in the little puzzle box was the correct notes, and then when Adam played the or sorry, when Donovan, I should say, played the correct notes instead of the bad notes, hearing that music apparently is what opened the staircase hidden compartment.
Mhm. Yeah, so they find Fortune Merriwick's journal in the
Right,
stairs, and uh, then they are able to find out about the we find out more about the purple satchels that had the dirt.
right. And just an aside that doesn't really matter anymore, but so Fortune is Patience's sister, and they're both daughters of Meredith. But in the past, never in dialogue, but in the past, when we've seen um, family trees, Patience's sister was named Hope, but they have changed it to Fortune. But it's never been spoken in dialogue. So I mean, not that it matters at this point, but just an aside.
Mhm. Yeah. And then we have these scenes where Cassie is talking to her parents, her dad and her mom.
That was so weird to me. Did you like that?
Like it was very random and we've never really seen anything like that before.
Right.
But uh, it was okay.
The weird thing to
Yeah.
me is when she was talking to them at one point, it almost seemed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what it seemed to me, that Cassie almost wanted to lose her power. She was almost like, maybe if we don't get the amulet and the red haloed moon, comes to its zenith, that's what will be, if it hits its zenith and they haven't fixed it with the amulet or aren't protected by the amulet, then they're going to lose their powers. And she almost seemed like wanting that to happen a little bit. Did I misread that?
Mhm. Yeah, she seemed depressed, I would say.
Yeah.
This whole episode, there seemed it wasn't quite her normal self.
And
So, yeah.
also the thing that doesn't, when she was talking to her parents, and granted, these are not really her parents; they're her sort of imagination of her parents or whatever. But they knew about Grey House, and I'm like, when Cassie first moved into Grey House, like Grey House had been abandoned for 200 years or something. Elizabeth Merrick was the last person to live there, and like 200 years later, it was all dilapidated and run down. So like Cassie's mother and grandmother and great grandmother, they weren't living in Grey House. They weren't living in Middleton probably. But anyway.
But also I was confused because they she puts on this record because there's the light of the clear blue morning on the satchels, blue
Mm.
morning. And then so she puts on the record, and that record has evidently just been sitting there all this time. Like what? Like
Yeah, I know. It didn't make a lot of sense.
I mean, that was somehow the Merrywicks was the Dolly Parton record. I mean,
Well, I did like the idea. I did like the idea that she put on the Dolly Parton record, and of course, we heard what Cassie was hearing, right? And
what a
but
joy.
oh, sorry, what Joy was hearing. But Zoe was like, "I'm hearing Dolly Parton. Are you not hearing Dolly Parton?" I thought that was an interesting, you know, thing to do.
Well, yeah, it
I
was fun. I just didn't understand how it fit in with the lore that they'd established because, uh,
I,
like,
I don't know that I got confused by that too.
because that record came out in 1977, so one of the Merrywicks like charmed it, or and it's just been sitting there this whole time. Like what? It was. I didn't get it.
I suspect that you have thought more about it right now than the writers did,
Like
because
what?
it didn't make any sense to me either, and
And
so I
then
sort of just like whatever.
and they use the guidance from the record to find the secret cupboard in the mantle, and in there is the orbit of intent,
Right, the orb of intent, right?
or yeah, the orb of intent, sorry. And that was, it was just goofy. I really just felt like all of this magic stuff was just like goofy.
Yeah,
I can't think of a
I,
better word for it.
no, I can't think of a better word either. And I agree with you completely. It was just it's too much of a shift from what this show used to be.
Yeah,
You can have like the bags of dirt or the orb of intent or the amulet or whatever, but you've got all of them like piled right up on top of each other.
yeah,
It's like they're rushing to the end, which is maybe what they were doing. Maybe they were
yeah,
told. I mean, we don't really know exactly when they found out this was the last season. We know they shot two endings, so they must have been like done with production, but they must have been told like, "Hey, this might be the last season." So they were just trying to ram everything in to wrap it up.
yeah,
I don't know, but it all felt very rushed and
yeah.
yeah, it wasn't that interesting.
Yeah, and so then we have Stephanie and Adam kissing, and then Abigail and Donovan decide that they're going to elope. We should be married now. No more excuses, which is quite the transition from them wanting a long engagement not that long ago.
It is, but I think Abigail's the one. Abigail was the one who sort of wanted the long engagement, and I think they did a good job of showing how she changed her mind and decided she wanted
Hmm.
to get married right away. I think an elopement for them would have been perfect.
Yeah,
So I'm okay with that up till now, where we're at in this episode. I'm fine
yeah,
with the Abigail Donovan story. I
yeah.
think that's
I
progressing fine.
was I was fully expecting the finale, especially because it was called The Wedding. I was fully expecting it to be a marriage for Abigail and Donovan, and I would have been happy with
Same,
that.
exactly. I'm
Um,
exactly the same.
mhm. So then we have the latch on the hope chest is the mold of the amulet. And this was goofy too. The whole idea that they're going to be like melting down ore and like making like,
Well, I think of all the things that we've just talked about, this was the one that actually sort of made the most sense to me.
mhm.
Like they needed the amulet. We've known that for a while. Like they could have just ignored this orb of intent and all this other like, gobbledygook to get you there. You know, they can't find any amulets. They've been looking for amulets. They're either destroyed or whatever. They find this mold and then they have to make their own amulet. That's a much clearer through line of the story that I
Yeah.
wish they had just gone straight to that. So I didn't mind that. I just minded all the nonsense that it took to get there.
Like
And it
seriously, we had in one episode, we had the magic record, we had the orb of intent, we had the journal, the fortune's journal, we had the mold for the amulet.
right. And
Uh
correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me
a
if I'm
lot.
wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. None of that other stuff, the orb, the record, the journal, none of that actually led to the mold. Didn't they just sort of notice it at some
Yeah,
point in
they
time?
just sort of noticed it on the hope chest.
Yeah. So it's like all that
Yeah,
other
you're right.
stuff. If that had somehow led to the mold, maybe you could say, okay, they had to go step A, step B, C, D, and then they got to their goal. But instead, there was all this other stuff, and they're like, "Oh, hey, by the way, look at the latch on the hope chest. It's
Yeah.
it's the amulet."
Like they did way better last season with the Heart of Merrywick. with
Absolutely.
and then the underground tunnel and the finding all the clues to the heart of America. I thought that was a lot better, especially the fact that the ring ended up being what Donovan used to propose. So all of those clues kind of worked way better.
Yeah, I feel like they were trying to replicate that. They were like, "Oh, because that
Mhm.
worked so well. Let's do again. Let's have another mystery where we have clues." But last season, it went through the whole season. So, like, if we had found, the
Mhm.
record 3 episodes ago,
Right.
and then the next episode that leads to the orb or that leads to the patient's journal or whatever, fine. But all that happened in the span of like a single episode. It was too much.
Yeah, I agree. So what would you give this episode 1 to 10?
A generous 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean
And it ends
generous.
with all of them collapsing, the episode, by the way.
Which I didn't mind that. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. Like, because obviously if they don't get, it raised the stakes. If they don't get this amulet to protect them from the moon, then it's not just that they're going to lose their powers. It seems like they might also be, could they die? I mean, it seemed like it was a very serious thing. They were feeling very
Yeah.
weak and passing out. I mean,
Yeah.
so I didn't mind that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I agree with you. I on the 5. Well, let's talk about the finale then. The wedding is called, and they start out making uh the amulet. Uh, they're trying different things. They have to use certain kinds of wood in order to uh melt down the ore, and so that's kind of a thing throughout this episode, is trying to, because at first they make it and it doesn't work, and then they use what is the thing they use, I forgot.
They
It's
had oh, you mean the ingredients? They had like a piece of the forever tree, and then they
yeah
had like a different kind of wood. There were all these different ingredients that they had to use. Oh, in
yeah
the end, they ended up finding the base of the orb of intent had
yeah
like a
that's what
little
it is.
note, and they so they used that, and it worked.
Yeah.
Again, like yet another secret compartment that we have to find with yet another, hidden message.
Yeah.
It's just a little much.
Yeah. So we find out that that George is running the bistro now while Stephanie's gone.
Right.
Yeah. And she's gone off to Paris, but her flight has been canceled, so she's back.
So
And
I got a little confused. I mean, by this, let's just talk about the Stephanie Adam
yeah,
storyline for a second, if we can. So
yes,
she's going to go to Paris, fine, and he's going to like take her to the airport, but her flight got canceled, and then she was like, "Oh, I got a new flight," and it was like 4 a.m. in the morning,
yeah. So
and
she
they were
says
gonna.
we're gonna meet up at 2 a.m. But then they end up getting married. So I guess was her flight canceled again?
Well, it's like they were going to go to the wishing well for a bit. At first, I thought they were like he was going to be on a plane to Paris with her, but then he was like, "Oh no, we're going to the wishing well." Before it was also weird. And then they were like, yeah, so we're on the way to the airport. And then they went to a commercial break, and they came back from the commercial break, and there she is in her wedding dress. And I was like, did I miss something? Did I fall asleep during in between
Yeah,
commercials?
no, it was weird. It was like all of a sudden, does she have like another day, another 2 days? Like there seemed to
Well,
be
sorry, they explained later, like, oh, we were on our way, and like we had I was a flat tire or something, and they ran into this wedding cake truck or whatever. So she was going to miss her flight anyway. So they just decided to get married, and now they're both going to go to Paris together. And I guess
uh-huh.
who cares about his job at the church or his job at the hospital, which he's been spending all this time. He's like, who cares? I'm going to go to Paris for 6 months with
Yeah,
Stephanie.
I guess I missed that whole part about the truck.
It, it,
I
it
was
happened.
just kind of like, what? Why are they not they've all of a sudden got like multiple days.
I know it didn't make any sense. The whole structure of this episode, like I said, this is one aspect of it, and that, as I said earlier, like Joy being part of the amulet storyline, and then they're all worried around the cauldron. Then you cut to, oh, there she is on a date with Zoe, or there she is walking out of the house and meets up with Zoe, or on a date with
Yeah,
Charlotte. And I'm like, what? Like,
it was a
I don't know.
lot.
It was a lot.
Well, and so then they decide to get married, Adam and Stephanie, and like I just don't understand if people are invested, if they think that people love Adam and Stephanie, and some people do. So if they think that this is going to be a really swoon worthy, like, oh, great ending, why on earth would you have the wedding be on a boat when Donovan doesn't, I mean, when Adam is seasick, and
Well,
like it was the most unromantic wedding I can even think of.
Well, first of all, where they shot it did not look very interesting. It was just like in a marina or something, but it wasn't very interesting. I mean, they had previously established, remember, getting married on a boat was one of her bucket list things
Oh, I
when she had
forgot
that
that.
bucket list. But what's never been established before, I don't think, is that Adam gets seasick. So, I mean, I guess they
Yeah.
did that because it's like it can't be a perfect wedding. It's got to be, and this is the thing
I don't
about
know. I thought it was like such an unromantic, like they couldn't even say their vows. They were just like, okay, I guess uh, that you're,
what this
I
whole
guess you're married
season.
now. Like, what?
Yeah.
It was
What this
weird.
whole season has been, and especially this last episode, maybe a couple episodes, is very unhallmark. Like with Hallmark, you always expect the beautiful weddings and the happy endings. And yeah, it's happy. I mean, Stephanie
Hmm.
and Adam are married, and that's great. But to do it sort of as like he got seasick, and so it's just not very romantic. And that's very unhallmark. It's not what you normally do. And I don't know, it did feel weird. I mean, I'm happy for Adam and Stephanie. I mean, good for them. I don't mind it as much as you do. I mean, I'm happy that Stephanie is happy because I really like that character. And if she's happy and she's going to go to Paris for cooking school, then great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just could have been done so much better.
Yeah. It was so like non-romantic to me. And especially somebody who is a chaplain and is a pastor at this church, like they could have had a romantic wedding. I also was not a huge fan of her wedding dress. I mean, it was pretty scandalous for Hallmark for her to have her entire back showing, and I just didn't think it was that pretty of a dress. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I mean, did you like it better than Abigail's wedding dress with the big poofy shoulders from a few
Oh yeah,
episodes
that
ago?
one was terrible. It was better than that. It Yeah, that one was really not my favorite.
Right.
Yeah. But she looked beautiful. She's a beautiful person. It just wasn't my favorite design. And
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was quite, scandalous in a way. I mean, I scandalous. I mean, by Hallmark standards,
yeah,
it was quite revealing.
yeah,
I mean, Stephanie is, that actress is a beautiful woman, and she looked great in
right.
that dress. But is that dress Stephanie? You
Yeah,
know, it's a beautiful dress on a beautiful woman, but would Stephanie, the character of Stephanie, pick that dress? I don't know.
yeah, yeah, I agree. So then we have the Joy and Zoe are meeting Joy's dad. Have a little bit of a thing with that. And so that was kind of fun. They have definitely been the best part of the season. uh,
Absolutely. I the whole thing with Charlotte, who's her
yeah.
ex, I guess, showing up at the last minute. I mean, if this was an episode in the middle of the season, I would be like, oh, that's interesting. But to
Hmm.
bring that in at the very end, and then so I get it, they want more obstacles between that relationship. But then when Charlotte, they later have lunch or whatever, and Zoe, you can tell she doesn't really want her, but she doesn't want to be that person. So she's like, sure, you should go have lunch and catch up with your old friend.
They go on this date with to meet Joy's dad, and Charlotte is there. Who have we seen Charlotte before? They acted like we were supposed to remember her.
I don't think we've ever seen her before. She might have mentioned her before, but we definitely haven't seen her before. But this is my one problem. I love Joy and Zoe together, and I think they're great. But my biggest problem with this was so uh, Joy went out to have lunch with Charlotte with Zoe's sort of reluctant permission. She didn't want to be that person, that doesn't want you to see your ex. And then when she gets there and Charlotte tells her, like, listen, I want to get back with you. And Joy has this hesitation. And I'm like, you have got this fantastic woman in Zoe.
Yeah.
Why are you even hesitating? You should have instantly said, oh, that's so sweet, but sorry, I'm not interested. I have a girlfriend.
I agree.
Which is what happened in the end, but it was just more kind of drama for drama's sake and without any purpose.
Yeah. And I agree. I thought it was strange. I was like, what? I was expecting her to be like, no way. I would never do that or have more of a sort of strong reaction. And then, I mean, I guess her relationship with Zoe is sort of new, but since we don't even know this person or her backstory with this person, it seemed like a strange reaction to me as well.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So then we also have Tom going into surgery, and there's a sweet scene where Martha says, "My life would never be the same without you." That was sweet.
Oh, I mean, these two are great together. And again, if this was like the middle of the season, this would have been a fine plot for them.
Mhm.
But to have this be the only thing Martha participates in the entire, final episode just feels like, she's such a huge part of this show. And instead we spend all the time with the witches and the cauldron and the magic and nothing with, or very little with Martha and Tom.
Yeah, it would have been fun if there had maybe been something in either the mayor's house or in maybe the botanical gardens, or it's just something that Martha were to like find and help with. Would have been fun.
Right. Right.
But it was cute. It was sweet. And then we have Vincent is back for this
Yeah.
finale.
Your favorite.
Yes, that's right. And he is going to be moving to Middleton. He is going to be fostering the kid that we met early in the season. He's going to be foster dad. And the thing I thought that was I liked seeing what Vincent back, and it was nice they had that. But I thought it was strange that Stephanie would have Vincent marry them, and the only reason they gave is because he has a boat. And I mean, I don't know why she wouldn't have had Martha marry them. I would think that would make more
Right.
sense.
Way more sense, right? I mean, you could still have Vincent there because he's providing his boat. That's fine.
Sure.
But get Martha out there, and that gets her involved in more of that storyline. I mean, I get that they didn't want Martha involved in all the magic storyline, but there were all these other storylines that she definitely could have been involved in along the way. She could have been involved in giving some advice to Stephanie when Stephanie's trying to deal with Adam and whether she goes with him or not. With Abigail, I mean, there's a ton of things she could have been involved in, and that's one of them, and that's a perfect one.
And I'm
With the
pretty
mayor,
sure
she's married people before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the whole like captain of a boat marrying people thing is only like if you're in the Coast Guard or like uh an actual like not this kind of boat. Not like it's not
Right.
just, like if
Well, they said
if
he got.
if I buy a boat, I can't all of a sudden like start marrying people just because I have a boat.
No, but they did say that he got ordained online.
Yeah, they did. I
So
added that at the end.
yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's fine. I mean, Vincent was back. I mean, at least they referenced that storyline that went nowhere with him fostering that kid. I mean, at least now we know he's going to move back to town, foster the kid, buy a house. That's great.
We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
So fair enough. They gave him a little bit of closure. I mean, I guess that's better than if we had just never seen him in this final episode. It's like, oh, there is a character that just went nowhere. But I know you liked him. Did he seem grayer? Like his hair is all gone
He
gray.
did seem
Did you notice
different.
that?
Like I almost didn't recognize him at first. Like he looked a lot different. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely did.
So
What?
then we had a funny scene where Zoe decides that she's going to learn how to salsa. And so Samantha says, "You couldn't handle all this without salsa." That was fun. I liked it. But we find out that Sam is evidently great at salsa. Who knew?
I mean, Sam is apparently great at everything. He's a world-class surgeon, also a rock musician in a
Yeah.
band. He
Oh,
does magic like nobody's business,
Right.
and he can salsa dance. There's apparently nothing he can't do,
Yeah.
except play basketball without getting injured. No, I thought that was cute. I love Samantha, and I love Samantha with George. And later there's a hint that they might get married, which was great.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for the salsa dance when everybody was dancing, but then they waited until later when they were sort of alone and they were doing their salsa dance. But that was sweet. I love those two characters together. I'm glad they overcame whatever little problems they had in this episode.
Yeah.
It
would have been
they are together.
fun to have had one scene where Sam is teaching her salsa, but we just
Yeah, right.
we're just told
We never
that-
got that.
We're just told that he did teach her sometime in all of this. He taught her. So, but that would have been fun to see. But then we get a scene with the Merriwick women confronting the Red Moon. Well, they figured out that the dirt in the satchels, that's the element that they had to melt down.
Right, I've got that in my notes. So that was the final piece.
Yeah.
So that at least made sense that now we know what those satchels of dirt were all about.
Right.
That was the final piece to make the amulet.
Yeah. So they
what-
melted down. And I mean,
once they walked outside there,
yeah.
once they walked outside and they had the amulet, and then that tree falls down and Cassie like sees Grace like in a vision or something. I'm not really sure what that was all
that
about.
was weird. She like calls out to Grace, and then the tree falls down and they find the amulet in the tree, and they confront the Red Moon, and you literally see like the redness coming into the amulet. That was it did feel very Charmed, very WB kind of feeling.
100%. It was very much not this show, where there's these visual effects of like the magic powers. I mean, it was a whole lot of a shift for the last, couple of episodes.
Yeah. Also, earlier in the episode, they are all sort of disappointed that they can't light the wood on fire with their powers, and I'm like, what?
Have we ever seen them be able to just?
No.
Yeah, we've never seen them be able to like start a fire with their mind. I mean, again, they're trying to say that they have all these powers that we've never seen before. We've always just seen slight intuition, and they can't really read people's minds, but they can sort of like, they know what's going to happen, and they can sort of divine a few things.
Yeah.
But this whole idea, like, I mean, can they levitate? Are they flying on broomsticks, as you said? I mean, it's all a bit, it all a bit took a weird left turn at the last minute.
Yeah, it was goofy. And so then they suck in all the redness, and then that's when we get the wedding after that.
Right. And they get all their powers back as soon as the red is gone. They now can, they realize what's happening, and they have all their powers back, which is good.
Yeah. And it was, I wrote down, they get married, rushed. What a weird wedding.
very weird, very rushed,
Yeah.
very just trying to jam everything in here. But the weird thing is, they said they shot like 2 endings, one to wrap it up and one if there was going to be an 8th season. But I mean, I'm presuming only the sort of final end where like everybody's leaving town was different. And then the rest of the episode was more or less the same. So even if they had left things open for like next season, it still would have felt like a very rushed, very weird episode, no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't think they can use that as an excuse. Like, well, we just had to wrap everything up because, it was all a bit much.
Yeah. And then they have
And
like
then,
a second kind of wedding at Grey House. And then it's just weird to me that they would have think that what we wanted was Adam and Stephanie to have a rushed wedding as opposed to having Donovan and Abigail get married in this finale. Like, what were they thinking
well,
with that?
I don't know, but let's talk about Abigail and Donovan for a second, because this is the thing that I've been looking at the social medias and stuff.
Yeah.
This is the thing that most people are upset about, is that they, because everybody else sort of had a happy ending, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else is where they want to be. Sam and Cassie are going to travel the world. George and Samantha are together. Stephanie's married to Adam. Great. Zoe and Joy are in a good place. Everything's great, except for Abigail and Donovan. And my feeling is, I have very mixed feelings about this. Abigail is one of my favorite characters, and I've liked her with Donovan, but throughout the whole relationship, there has been this thing where like, oh, he wants to go to the Capitol and they don't want a long distance relationship, but they all have ambitions. They're two very ambitious people. And so it actually kind of makes sense, although they did it in a very clumsy way, as this whole episode was. It makes sense for them to sort of sit down and realize, as he said, it made sense. We're never going to put our marriage first.
Yeah.
Our careers are always going to be first, and that's a problem. And that makes sense to me. They did it in a very clumsy, very awkward way. What I hope this leads to, and this is where
Go ahead. Sorry.
This is where I sort of what I want to see next. If they're going to do like a Good Witch movie down the road, I want to see kind of a spinoff. I want to see Abigail in Italy. I want to see Abigail. The Good Witch goes to Italy, and it's Abigail in Italy. Causing a ruckus or doing whatever, and follow her through Italy. I think that could be really fun.
Yeah, I think that could be fun because her big dream to go to Tuscany is kind of thing. And at the beginning, he says they're going to go to Tuscany to get married. And I felt like they expected, we forgot to mention this in the last episode, they expect us to be way more invested in Dottie and Donovan's father's relationship falling apart. I mean, I don't know. It's not like a character that I'm super invested in, Dottie. She's fine, but
we found out that they were like, I think it was all, we found out that Dottie's been like separated from her husband for like 2 months or whatever. Like they haven't even been living together or they're sort of legally separated. But I think we're not really supposed to be invested in those characters. That whole thing was revealed only for Donovan to sort of like realize, oh, all marriages aren't perfect. And maybe that's why he starts thinking like, do I really want to be married to Abigail? Because I thought my parents had this perfect marriage, and obviously they don't. Although you have to be kind of blind not to see that their marriage wasn't great. But yeah, I was never invested in Dottie as a character. She worked great as kind of a foil for Martha,
yeah.
And I thought that was like her only real purpose, which was fun when it was Martha versus Dottie, and there was like, that kind of stuff was fun. But otherwise, Donovan, it was fine. I want Abigail to be happy, but he was always kind of a bland character for me.
Yeah.
I was never.
Well,
I
don't know. I just feel like that they have this idea that like marriage has to be only one kind, that it has to be a sort of Adam and Stephanie at the end saying that they're going to be at church with their 3 kids and their, kind of thing, where it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. You can, they can have a marriage however they want to have a marriage, and I don't know. I feel like that it was kind of a weird way to end the character, and also we never got any closure on Abigail and the whole thing with the flower universe people
That's true. And if
and
she's
her
going
store.
to now, she's going to Italy, but is she just? I mean, obviously, if they had plane tickets to Italy and they were going to go get married and do a honeymoon, it's probably like a trip that was planned for a couple of weeks or something like that. Who knows? But I mean, did it sound like Abigail was like moving to Italy, sort of permanently?
Yeah,
Like, I'm off to Italy and see what happens.
yeah, it did
And
to
so,
me.
I mean, it would have been interesting if she had just sort of said, if when she said, "Oh, I'm going to Italy," if somebody had said, "What about your flower shop?" And she could have been like, "Just got off the phone with Flower Universe, sold them my store, and I'm off to Italy to pursue
Yeah,
my dream." At least that would have wrapped that up, and it would have made sense why we've had this Flower Universe thing going on, because now that just gave her excuse to say, "You know what, I just sold my shop to them, and I'm going to use that money. I'm going to live my
yeah.
life in Italy. See ya." And that would have made much more sense. In my
Mhm.
mind, that's what happened. That's my new headcanon.
Yeah, I agree. And also, so Sam says he wants to take Cassie around the world. I don't want to look back on our life and have any regrets. And I feel like that it would have actually been better for Cassie to have finished like and be supporting Middleton and being, I don't know, something involved with the town or something like her leaving. I feel like it's never been a big dream of hers to travel, so it's not like something we've heard a lot of. And
Well, she's traveled the world already when she was in college and after college. I mean, she's talked about how
Mhm.
she's been all over the world. So, she's kind of done that. I get that they want to get away so that they can focus on themselves and like get Sam away from work. But it could have been something as simple as, we're going to take like, a month or something. But traveling the world just seems like, again, unless they're trying to set something up, I don't know that they are. I think they just felt like that was a
Mhm.
nice, you know, end. But if they're trying to set something up where like we're going to get, Good Witch in Hong Kong or something as one of these Hallmark destination movies that they sometimes do,
Yeah.
that would be okay too. I mean, it would be great if this wasn't the absolute end of it, just because it was so odd and so not like your regular Good Witch. Um, so I don't know. But the other thing is, so George says, "Oh, don't worry about Grey House. He'll take care of Grey House." But then I thought he was taking care of the bistro because Stephanie's in Paris for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then what about Bell Book and Candle? Bell
Right.
Book and Candle is just going to sit there, and there's nobody to take care of that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't answer
It's
everything, I guess, but
no.
still.
Yeah. And then you have Joy and Zoe doing the salsa and their kiss. And it was a big moment for inclusivity and representation in Hallmark shows. We've never had a same-sex kiss on any of the shows, and it was a nice moment for the
Oh,
couple.
oh, really? Is that the first? Is that the first?
Mhm.
Even in their
Yeah.
movies and stuff, they never. That's great.
I
No,
think
so I think
they've
those two
had it in the
characters are great.
movies, but they've never had it in the they've had a couple movies now with LGBTQ characters, but they've never had and with kisses and things, but they've never had one in any of the shows.
Well, I will say I am somewhat heartened as I was looking through all the social media to see what people were saying. I mean, there's a lot of negativity about this last episode, but but very little of it was about Joy and Zoe. I think there were so many
Yeah.
other things to complain about that was like minor on the list, which makes me feel good that that's
Yeah.
not what they're complaining about. A lot of people complaining about Abigail and Donovan, which I completely understand. Like if they had given everybody a happy ending, that's what people want from Hallmark. If Abigail and
Yeah.
Donovan had been like, "Hey, we are going to Italy, where we're going to elope into Italy, and Cassie and Sam are going around the world, and maybe their first stop will be Italy, so that they can be at their wedding, and then Stephanie's going to Paris, and everyone's
Yeah.
leaving for Europe apparently." Um, it would have been a happy closure for everybody, and I think people would have complained a lot less. But even if they'd done that, the rest of the episode is still very disjointed, and I
Yeah.
don't know.
Like
It
I
felt
just
rushed.
it seems so weird to me that anybody in the story writing team thought that we wanted to end things off with a wedding between Stephanie and Adam and not Abigail and Donovan. Like, if anything, I would have had Stephanie and Adam kind of have a tearful goodbye and she goes off to Paris. Like, that would have actually been better. And then have Donovan and Abigail's wedding. And you could even, it would have been so funny. You could have had Mayor Martha marry Abigail and Donovan. And if you could have had a joke of like, I never thought I'd marry the mayor of Mayor of Blairsville or something. Like, it could have been really good.
Right. You're right. I agree with you completely. If it had been Abigail and Donovan married and Stephanie and Adam, who have had their ups and downs,
Yeah.
and Stephanie's like, I just don't want to do it. I'm going to go to Paris and live my life there. And they can, leave in a good place. Like, we
Right.
still love each other, but it's just not going to work out. Let me go to Paris and get my head clear and go to baking class. You stay here in your church that you just spent, thousands to move and open. And then, in 6 months, I'll come back to Middleton and we'll see. And they could have just left that open a little bit, but in a good place. And then everybody would have had a happy ending. And I think it would have been a much better ending. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So we did get some comments. I asked on Twitter what people thought of the finale. And we have Dalen Grover says, great, except for Abigail and Donovan. Matthew Wong says, I was expecting a heartfelt sentiments episode that didn't materialize. Miss Bell mentioned they filmed 2 endings, but this felt like they expect another season or movie finale in the works. It says, by the way, wasn't this filmed back in January? I don't know when it was filmed, so okay, help you there. So then Terry says, liked it, definitely did not feel like a series finale. If they knew, you'd think they'd try to get Grace back. Could care less about Stephanie and Adam. Not that many loose ends, but why they had to do that to Abigail and Donovan, ugh. I bet if they had a season 8, they would have fixed that. I also feel like this might be it for the franchise. If we ever do get another movie, it's not going to be for a few years. I think it would be smart to do a few movies down the line, but I just get a feeling like this is done. But then Brienne, she says, I loved it. It's so sad it's over. We also had some comments on our patron group on Facebook. And so it's only $2 a month to join us on Patreon and help out the podcast, and you can be part of our patron group. And it's really fun. And we have watch alongs and other good stuff. But Scott Stone, he says, I liked the wrap up of the season-long storyline about dirt and an amulet. I liked that they tried to tie up loose ends, but didn't like what they did with when they broke up Abigail and Donovan. Why do that? I'll miss the show, but it had a good run. Lauren Yeagle says, I thought it was a decent, although rushed way to wrap up the season. Joy and Zoe were the best part of the season, and I'm glad their romance was such a prominent storyline. Happy that Stephanie got her happy ending, even though I still think Adam is the worst. Abigail and Donovan's breakup seemed inevitable to me. They were never on the same page about anything, which seems like a terrible way to start out a marriage. George works at the cafe now. He's the original Hallmark man of many jobs. That's one thing I joke that on in these movies, because the bad guy is always, we call it the bad man of business, the overwork. So the ultimate contrast to that is the man with many jobs, who's like, you see him on all these different roles throughout the movie. And so, yes, George is the original man with many jobs. And
Right.
yeah, I think I'm basically on the same page as Lauren here about that, about her.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of those comments. I mean, I think, it didn't end the best way it could have ended. Just in I mean, we've been busting on these last 2 episodes, but I have loved this series for 7 years. And yeah, it ended on a bit of a weird note, but overall it was a great series that I loved, and I would love to see some movies down the road. But if we don't get any movies and this really is the end, I can live with that. And I think we got 7, great years. and which is
Yeah.
more than a lot of shows get for sure. And as Catherine Bell said, don't be sad that it's over. Be glad that it happened.
Yeah, it's been really fun getting to go to Middleton and all the romance, all the fun moments, the fun characters. We loved Grace, of course. Uh we loved characters that haven't been around for a while, but I always remember Ben fondly, Ben and Stephanie. They were probably one
Sure.
of my favorite relationships in the show. Then Sam and Cassie have been such a lovely couple to watch. Then we also had uh we had Joy coming on. So we had Joy and Carter, who I loved Carter, and I hope they use that actor because he was so charming. I really enjoyed him. I liked Vincent. I think that it's been of course Mayor Martha is the best character on the show. And it's been such a great thing for the podcast. Getting to interview Catherine Disher 6 times has been incredible. So yeah, it's been a fun show. I think they took some more risk than maybe the other Hallmark shows, which I appreciate. And it was a kind of a goofy, weird finale, but it did have sweet moments with Martha and Tom and um and
Joy and Zoe.
Cassie and yeah, Joy and Zoe. So all of that worked pretty well. So I was overall like mostly satisfied. It was just kind of a weird way to end the season, but I mean the series, but it had its moments.
It was. It was. I mean, I agree with almost everything that you just said. I mean, in the end, if this was not the season or the series finale, if it was just a season finale, I'd be like, they could have done better. But if this is the way they're going to wrap it up, I'm pretty satisfied with everybody, and I'm hoping that the Abigail Donovan thing, which is what most people are complaining about, it leads in. Like I said, I hope that leads into some movie down the road with Abigail, and maybe it won't. Maybe this is really it. And if it is, I'm okay with that. It was a great run, and I'll be. Hopefully, they'll put this season out on DVD. I have the DVDs of all the other seasons, and I'll put this one up on my shelf with all the other ones.
That'd be fun. So there we go. What would you give this one out of 10? The series finale.
I give it like a 6. There was there was a lot of nostalgia value to it, but there was a lot of problems, as we talked about. It wasn't the best episode, but the series overall gets a big 10 from me. So this episode, maybe not so much.
Well, let us know if you're listening what you think. Do you think they ended off well? Maybe you liked it better than we did. Put in the comments section or on Twitter. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us this season, Randy. We've had a great time, and we'll definitely have to have you on again podcasting about movies or other things because I've really enjoyed it. And we're grateful for the other hosts that we've had on the Good Witch podcast over the years, whether it's be Georgia or Amber or Amy, myself, and so we're grateful for everybody who's helped make this podcast possible. And so, yeah, thanks so much. You can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Please take a look at that. Then also make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. If you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. It really helps us out a lot. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our merch store, which has a bunch of goodies inspired merch. So you get that while it's still available. It helps the podcast, and it's a lot of fun. And we have our patron group, like we said, where we talk about things like this finale, and we sure appreciate that support. So all that information is in the description. And yeah, it's been fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.